It was just after midnight, September 12th. The control room at Goddard Space Flight Center was almost empty, just the soft hum of servers, the blue glow of monitors, the air conditioner sighing through vents. Ray Hollis sat at the last console by the far window, staring at the screen not because he had to, but because he couldn't sleep anywhere else. He'd been a systems analyst at NASA for 12 years. He'd watched hundreds of launches, tracked hundreds of orbits, seen the Earth from so many camera feeds that it felt more familiar than his own street. But that night, nothing felt familiar. The world below him, his world, was still burning, and the data coming in from orbit didn't make sense. He leaned closer to the monitor. There was a faint pulse in the infrared feed from the Landsat array. At first, he thought it was a glitch. Static often followed a massive urban power surge, but this was steady, rhythmic, a pattern. He rubbed his eyes, checked the system clock, adjusted the filters. The pulse didn't change. It was centered exactly over Lower Manhattan. Ray looked around the room. The others had gone home hours ago. Only the janitor's cart and the low hum of machines kept him company. He called up the last satellite sweep from the night before. Same pattern, faint, circular, expanding slowly outward like ripples in water. He tried to tell himself it was residual heat, atmospheric distortion, some artifact from the dust still rising into the upper troposphere. But there was one problem: it wasn't heat. Infrared showed motion, a moving halo of cold light. He switched cameras, NOAA goes, even a defense satellite feed he wasn't really supposed to access. Every one of them saw it. A faint circular ring, luminous but soft, expanding above the city and drifting east toward the Atlantic. He sat back, staring. It reminded him of breath in winter air there, and then gone but somehow still moving. Ray had always believed in measurable things. Numbers, physics, data that obeyed gravity and logic, but logic had left with the daylight yesterday. He wrote a note in the system log: unidentified atmospheric anomaly, expanding radial signature from Manhattan, altitude 36,000 feet. He paused, then added, pattern resembles interference or communication. He deleted the last word, then typed it again. 2:17 a.m. The pattern grew stronger. The lines between frequencies sharpened, and through the static he heard something, not a sound exactly, a modulation. A faint tone buried beneath the hum of the system, like the low resonance you feel before thunder. He turned up the gain. The speakers hissed, cracked, then steadied. And within the hiss the tone repeated every few seconds. 3 pulses, pause, 2 pulses, long silence. He recognized it before he understood it. It was the same sequence the satellites used when sending data pings to Earth. Except this time the signal wasn't going out, it was coming back. By dawn, the entire East Coast sky had turned pale gray. Ray was still at the console, eyes dry, coffee cold. He hadn't told anyone yet. He didn't know what to say. Every sensor pointed toward New York now showed the same faint distortion, a translucent ring, fading but not gone. In visible light, there was nothing, but in spectral analysis the pulse continued, slow and methodical. He loaded the last data set and watched the lines scroll across the screen. Then he noticed something else. The rhythm wasn't random. It matched Earth's rotation, as if the pulse was adjusting, syncing, orbiting with the planet. At 7:03 a.m., his phone buzzed. It was his supervisor, Lena Wright. She sounded exhausted. "Ray, you're still there?" "Yeah, I was just checking the GOES feed." "Don't." "Excuse me. You didn't hear that from me, but DC called. They want us to scrub the data, all of it. Atmospheric noise, magnetic interference, doesn't matter. It's not ours anymore." He hesitated. "Lena, there's something up there." "I know," she said softly. "That's why I'm telling you to stop looking." Then she hung up. He stared at the receiver, the dial tone droning like a flat heartbeat. Outside, the sun rose over Maryland, pale and colorless. On his screen, the pulse was still there, now drifting farther out to sea. He whispered to himself, almost afraid to hear it out loud, "It's leaving." By noon he had saved a copy of the data to a portable drive, not to hide it, just to remember that it was real. He walked out of the building, the September air sharp and thin. People were quiet that day. Traffic slower. The world seemed to move under a heavy blanket of disbelief. He looked up at the sky, and for a moment, he thought he saw the faintest shimmer high above, like a memory reflected in glass. He whispered, "Where are you going?" The sky didn't answer, but somewhere far beyond what cameras could see, the satellites kept listening. And that night at exactly 2:17 a.m., they heard it again. 3 pulses, pause, 2 pulses, the same message. But this time it wasn't coming from Earth. The next day began like a dream he couldn't wake from. Ray sat on the edge of his bed, still in yesterday's clothes, watching sunlight crawl across the floor. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the pulses repeating in the dark. 3, pause, 2, like a heartbeat but not human. By mid-morning he drove back to the center. The security gate was half-staffed, the usual banter gone. The guard waved him through without a word. Inside, the halls smelled of coffee and printer ink and something else, fear maybe. The kind that settles into silence. Lena was already there, waiting by his console. Her face was pale, her hair tied back like she hadn't slept either. "Ray," she said softly, "we have to talk." He nodded, waiting. "They pulled the feeds," she said. "All of them, not just ours, Dodd, NOAA, even private orbital networks. Every single one's been flagged for data contamination. They're saying it's an atmospheric refraction caused by ionized dust." "Dust doesn't pulse," he said. "I know." She glanced around the room, lowered her voice. "They sent a team last night, downloaded the logs, everything's encrypted now. They'll say it never happened." Ray felt the back of his neck go cold. "Then why am I still here?" She looked at him for a long time. "Because you made a backup, didn't you?" He didn't answer, but his silence was enough. She smiled faintly. "Good, don't lose it." They worked through the morning, pretending to process other data, but Ray's screen, hidden behind layers of dummy windows, still showed the anomaly. Now far out over the Atlantic, the pulse pattern growing weaker but steadier. He slowed the playback. The tone wasn't random. The gaps between pulses weren't even, they curved like a wave shape, like a modulation. He remembered something from years ago when he worked on deep space telemetry. When signals traveled long enough through charged particles, they warped in frequency, compressed like sound through water. But this one wasn't fading, it was evolving. Lena leaned in. "You see it too?" He nodded. "It's learning to talk." That night he took the drive home and plugged it into his personal computer, a machine too old to connect to the internet, built before everything was watched. He isolated the signal, stretched it, reversed it, mapped the waveform into audible range. At first it was nothing but hiss and tone. Then very faintly beneath the noise came something that shouldn't have been there, rhythm. Not mechanical, not random, breathing. He froze. The sound rose and fell, gentle and deliberate, like someone asleep. He slowed it further. The pattern changed, aligning itself with Earth's rotation rate again, 23.934 hours. It wasn't just a signal, it was tracking us. He sat back, his heart pounding. He opened a new log file and began to type. "If this is communication, it's the most patient one we've ever received." Outside, the night was clear. Stars over Maryland shimmered softly, and for the first time in days he looked at them without fear. 2 nights later the pulse changed. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the same timestamp as before, it began to fragment, shorter bursts, irregular, almost like Morse code. He wrote down the sequence. It wasn't English. It wasn't binary. But when he plotted it as coordinates, the numbers lined up. Latitude, longitude, altitude, over the Atlantic, just past the continental shelf. He didn't tell Lena right away. He drove east instead, toward the coast, a 4-hour trip that felt like a single breath. The radio played static. The horizon glowed faintly blue in the pre-dawn haze. When he reached the shore near Cape May, he parked and walked to the water. The sea was perfectly still. No wind, no waves, just a long, flat mirror of light. And far out, near the line where the ocean met the sky, something flickered, pale and round, like a reflection without a source. He stood there for hours, watching. The flicker grew brighter, then faded again, pulsing with the same rhythm he'd memorized. 3, pause, 2. He whispered into the wind, "What do you want?" The sea answered with silence. When he returned to the center the next morning, Lena was waiting. "You were gone," she said quietly. I went to the coordinates. Her eyes widened. Ray, do you have any idea what? He cut her off. It's real, it's over the ocean now, and it's calling something. She stared at him, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked afraid. Calling what? He shook his head. I don't know, maybe not what, maybe who. She leaned closer. You think they're coming back? He looked past her out the window where the sky was pale and too bright to look at directly. I think they never left. That night, the signal vanished. No pulse, no echo, no trace. The satellites recorded nothing but static. The sky was silent again. But around the world, small anomalies began to appear. Power grids flickered for seconds at a time. Birds changed their migration routes. Compasses spun in brief, perfect circles. And over the Atlantic, the ocean glowed faintly for 3 nights in a row. No one connected the events. No one except Ray. He sat in his apartment, the old speakers still humming softly, and waited for the next pulse. It didn't come. But then, just before dawn, his screen lit up. A single message appeared across the black background. No origin, no header, no encryption. Just 4 words, pale and steady. We saw you too. He had been on that desert highway for nearly 6 hours, the road unraveling in a straight, merciless line under a moon so pale it looked sick. His car was the only moving thing for miles. Even the wind seemed to have evacuated this stretch of land long ago. The silence felt unnatural, too complete, too absolute, like the world was holding its breath. Then the radio died, not faded, not crackled, died as if every frequency on Earth had been switched off at the same exact second. He frowned, tapped the dashboard, and then the headlights flickered. Once, twice, a third time, then held steady but dimmer than before, washed out and yellow like old candles. He leaned forward. Something was wrong with the night. The stars were gone, not hidden, gone. The sky above him was an empty slab of matte darkness, and something massive, so massive it erased the constellations, was gliding silently overhead. The shape wasn't round or triangular or any recognizable geometry. It was a silhouette with no edges, a negative space carving itself through the air. The desert wind kicked up. His engine coughed, sputtered, then stalled. The steering wheel froze under his hands. His phone shut off. His pulse climbed in his throat. A thin vibration passed through the ground. Not like an earthquake, more like a subsonic hum threading through the bones of the earth, rising up through the pedals and into his legs. Then his headlights surged to full brightness, blindingly white, as if they'd been hijacked. A soundless explosion of light erupted above the car, a funnel of twisting, braided strands of white, each moving with a strange liquid elasticity. They didn't illuminate the desert, they consumed the space, pulling everything inward. His body jerked upward. He smashed into the roof of the car, then phased through it. No sensation of breaking through. Just the sickening certainty that gravity no longer applied to him. He rose into the beam, legs kicking instinctively though nothing resisted him. His skin prickled with a cold so sharp it felt metallic. Microscopic vibrations crawled across his face, his arms, his lungs. The world below shrank rapidly, the car becoming a piece of discarded debris, the highway a thin scar across the sand. Then the beam collapsed inward like a throat swallowing. Darkness, not black absence. A void with no depth cues, no sound, no orientation. He hung in it like a thought waiting to be spoken. A glow flickered somewhere ahead, then behind, then all around. Shapes materialized, first as ripples, then as distortions, then as entities made of refracted light and shifting geometry. They had limbs, but the limbs rearranged. They had heads, but the heads warped. Their silhouettes tore and repaired themselves in endless loops like living glitches. One approached. The void bent around it. He felt pressure against his chest, though nothing touched him. A tendril, thin, crystalline, extended from the being center and passed through his skin effortlessly. His body didn't resist because his body no longer obeyed him. His pulse quickened, then slowed against his will. His breath sank to a rhythm that wasn't human. Memories detonated inside his skull, not flashes, autopsies. They dissected his childhood. They reassembled his first love. They accelerated the grief of his father's funeral. They replayed nights he had forgotten, arguments he had repressed, moments he had sworn never to relive. Each memory was stretched, mirrored, inverted, then placed back in a sequence that felt wrong, like they were rewriting the architecture of his identity. Two more beings joined the first. The void dimmed to reveal symbols appearing around him, orbiting rings, fractals blooming like frost, equations that transformed faster than blinking, mechanical diagrams with impossible moving parts, maps of star fields he had never seen. The beings rotated in a slow, deliberate pattern around him, their tendrils weaving a lattice of light across his torso and skull. He felt his consciousness sink, expand, refract. His thoughts weren't thoughts anymore. They were coordinates, measurements, raw input. He wasn't a person. He was data. Then something changed. A deeper presence entered the void. He felt it before he saw it. A gravitational intelligence, colossal and ancient, pressing down on him like the weight of a planet. Space folded inward as it arrived. The smaller beings froze completely. It observed him, not visually, by dismantling the idea of him. Something scanned him on a level below atoms, below intention, below soul, and then, as if reaching a verdict, it withdrew. The smaller being sprang back into motion. One stepped forward and placed a mark on him, a thin, vertical line of burning silver etched across his sternum. It pulsed once, twice, sinking inside the bone. Then the void ruptured. He fell, through cold, through soundlessness, through the beam, and slammed into the driver's seat with enough force to tear a shout from his throat. The radio snapped back to life mid-song. The headlights looked normal. The highway was empty. The stars had returned. He gasped for air, fingers trembling as they curled around the wheel. Then he saw it. A faint glow beneath his skin. The mark, pulsing to a rhythm he didn't recognize. A rhythm that wasn't his. Something had come back with him. Something watching from the inside. He always hated the archive basement. Even during the day it felt wrong. Air too still, fluorescence too cold, silence too complete. But at night, when everyone else had already gone home and he was the only one left behind to finish cataloging the last batch of files, the basement felt like something buried alive. The walls sweated faint moisture. The pipes creaked in slow, metallic breaths. And the deeper he walked, the more he felt the same instinct a trapped animal feels right before a predator steps into the dark. The last row of shelves was colder than the rest of the room. He stopped there, clipboard in hand, inhaling shallowly. The air had a metallic aftertaste to it, like old blood and static electricity. A faint vibration hummed through the concrete floor, so soft he almost convinced himself it was his imagination. Then the bulb above him flickered, then flickered again, then stayed dim. He stared up at it, annoyed, but as he lowered his gaze he froze. A hairline crack had formed in the far wall. That crack hadn't been there before, he was certain. He walked past this wall every day. It was always solid, always plain. Now it pulsed, not visibly, structurally, as if the wall were an elastic membrane stretching with some slow internal pressure. He took a step back. The crack widened, silently, smoothly, like a mouth beginning to open. A breath of cold air drifted out, not basement cold. This was something else, something that made his skeleton flinch. It carried a scent he couldn't place, mineral, electric, ancient, and beneath that scent was a low, rhythmic tremor like a massive engine buried miles beneath the earth. He tried to step away. His left leg obeyed. His right leg didn't. It twitched, and his knee buckled as if someone had grabbed the muscle from inside. He fell against the shelves, sending binders crashing to the floor. Papers flew everywhere like startled birds. He scrambled back up, adrenaline surging, and that was when the crack rippled. The concrete surface folded inward, not crumbled, folded like paper being bent by invisible fingers. A gash formed, then a slit, then an aperture. A doorway made of shifting, self-repairing geometry. A light seeped out from it, pale blue with streaks of violet, flickering like bioluminescent veins. The light didn't behave like light. It didn't illuminate the room. It only illuminated him, clinging to his skin like strands of spider silk. He couldn't breathe, not fear, pressure. A presence pushed through the opening, not stepping, not crawling, not moving. simply emerging as if reality had thinned enough to allow something from another layer to slide into this one. The creature was tall, taller than any human, but impossibly thin, its limbs elongated and jointed at wrong angles. Its skin was transparent, layered like multiple organisms nested within one another. Veins of light drifted through it, pulsing with silent rhythm. Its face wasn't a face, just a smooth, shifting plate that formed and unformed suggestions of features. Eye sockets, then none, a mouth-like seam, then a blank plane again. It tilted its head. He felt his consciousness waver. The being stepped closer. Concrete floor didn't react. Its feet made no sound. The light within its body intensified with each motion, casting warped, liquid shadows across the walls. A thin tendril of luminous tissue unfolded from its forearm. He tried to back away, but the pressure in the air locked his muscles. The tendril touched his forehead. His vision imploded. He fell through memory, not like recalling something, but like plunging through a collapsing mine shaft of every moment he'd ever lived. He saw himself at age 5 crying in the grocery store aisle. He saw the night he realized his marriage was over. He saw the moment he chose this job over the one he truly wanted. Every regret, every betrayal, every shame, all extracted, rewound, magnified. The creature wasn't reading memories, it was harvesting them. His thoughts broke apart. His sense of identity splintered into shards. Language collapsed. Time ceased. He hung in a tunnel of neon fractals and cascading symbols, each one rewriting the edges of his awareness. His heartbeat slowed until he could feel every beat separately, like a hammer striking a distant metal plate. He couldn't scream. He had no breath left to scream with. Then, abruptly, the being withdrew the tendril. His body crumpled to the floor, a sack of trembling nerves and fractured mental echoes. He didn't feel the impact. He barely felt the shape of his own body anymore. The creature stood over him, studying him with that blank, shifting face. A second creature stepped out of the portal, then a third. They surrounded him, their bodies glowing in synchronized pulses. A vibration passed between them, communication, decision, judgment. One lifted a hand-like limb, placed it on his chest, and pressed. A surge of liquid light poured into him, flooding through his ribs, spreading through his bloodstream like invasive roots. The sensation was so alien he thought his heart ruptured, but then it kept beating, kept adapting, changing. The creatures retreated slowly, folding back through the aperture. The wall sealed behind them, concrete knitting itself together as though nothing had ever happened. He lay there for what felt like hours, staring up at the flickering ceiling light. Eventually he stood. His chest still glowed faintly beneath his shirt, pulsing in an unnatural rhythm. He walked toward the stairwell. He wasn't walking like himself. His balance felt too precise, his reflexes too sharp, his perception too wide. Something had awakened inside him, something that wasn't him, something waiting, something growing. She had lived in that apartment for 7 years, long enough to know every creak, every hum of old plumbing, every groan of the heating system. Nothing surprised her there, until the night the ceiling began to breathe. She first heard it around 2:40 a.m., a soft, rhythmic expansion that didn't match the pulse of the building. The air felt thick, humid, like the atmosphere before a storm. She sat upright in bed, listening. There it was again. The ceiling above her bed bulged downward by a centimeter, then retreated as if something enormous was slowly inhaling. She told herself it was old pipes, or her imagination, or anything normal. It wasn't normal. A faint vibration traveled through the walls, like low-frequency machinery purring behind the plaster. Her bedside lamp flicked on by itself, flickered, then burned out instantly, filling the room with the smell of scorched metal. Her phone vibrated on the nightstand. A notification flashed. Unknown signal detected source above her blood iced. She stared at the screen until it went black again, drained to 0% battery. Then the ceiling pulsed. Not sagging this time, warping, as if the material had turned elastic. The white paint rippled outward in perfect concentric rings. She scrambled out of bed, knocking her knee against the dresser, but her eyes stayed locked on that shifting surface. A hairline tear formed in the plaster. Then another. Thin fractures spiderwebbed outward, and a cold draft slipped through the cracks, carrying a sterile, metallic scent. The room dimmed, not from the lack of light, but as if the darkness itself had thickened. The tier widened. Something shone beneath it, an opalescent glow with a shifting spectrum, like the reflection of deep-sea creatures rising from the abyss. She felt pressure behind her eyes, a low ache that vibrated in sync with the hum from the ceiling. Her thoughts scattered. Her muscles tensed involuntarily. Then the ceiling opened. Not with an explosion, not breaking, unfolding, petals of plaster peeling back to reveal a circular aperture lined with smooth, luminescent material that wasn't metal but behaved like it. It pulsed, breathing in slow, heavy rhythm. From the center of the opening, filaments descended, thin, translucent threads that moved with deliberate intelligence. They swayed toward her, adjusting their shapes like antennae searching for a signal. She backed against the wall, chest tightening. A filament touched her ankle. Her vision went white. She felt herself dissolve, not metaphorically but literally. Her senses disassembled, hearing detached from time, sight separated from shape, memory fractured into shards. She hovered in a state that wasn't consciousness but wasn't unconsciousness either, something in between, something raw. Then she saw them, not in her room, not in the opening, inside her mind. Figures of impossible geometry, tall, narrow beings built of layered translucence, their bodies filled with flowing currents of bioluminescent patterns. Their faces were blank planes of shifting symmetry. Their forms flickered in and out of dimension like they were being rendered by a failing simulation. One moved closer. Her thoughts recoiled. Its presence was too large. It reached into her, not her body, but her concept of self, and began pulling. It extracted memories like files, her first heartbreak, her graduation, the night her father didn't come home, the moment she realized she was truly alone in the city, the first time she told a lie that mattered. Each memory was dissected, weighed, scanned. Some were kept intact, others were stripped to their emotional cores. Others were discarded entirely, pulled apart until they no longer resembled anything she recognized. A second being joined the first. Her heart thrashed in her chest, but her body didn't move. The filaments held her in place, suspended between agony and numbness. Her muscles spasmed. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't feel them. She felt only the pressure of something ancient, methodical, impossibly intelligent rearranging her from the inside. A third being appeared, larger, darker, carrying a gravity that made the others retreat slightly. It inspected her, its presence like a cold sun burning behind her ribs. A thin line of black light extended from its chest and touched her forehead. Her mind detonated into color. She saw a galaxy spinning in reverse, a star collapsing into a geometric core, a planet covered in crystalline growths pulsating like lungs, a network of luminous tunnels beneath an alien landscape, a chamber filled with beings like these examining countless others. Then the vision snapped shut. The large being placed a mark on her sternum, a tiny, searing point of light that burrowed beneath the skin, anchoring itself somewhere deep inside. The filaments retracted. The ceiling folded itself back into solid matter. She collapsed onto the bed, gasping. The room looked normal again. Silent, still, ordinary, but her mind wasn't. She could remember things that weren't hers, hear tones buried under the silence, sense patterns in the shadows, predict movements before they happened. The mark in her chest pulsed with a slow, alien rhythm syncing itself to her heartbeat. She sat upright, trembling, staring at her reflection in the dark window. Her pupils glowed faintly. Something had been installed in her, something she didn't understand, something that wasn't asleep, something that would eventually wake fully. He always believed forests were comforting, alive, but harmless. He'd grown up hiking, camping, walking trails alone without a second thought. But that night, deep inside the state forest where the trees grew too close and the moon barely pierced the canopy, he realized he had been wrong his entire life. Forests weren't comforting. They were watching. It started with the sound, not an animal call, not wind. A tone, a pure metallic resonance that darted between the trees like a message passing from trunk to trunk. He froze on the path, headlamp cutting a narrow cone of light. The tone shifted pitch, then modulated, then repeated in a pattern that felt almost intentional. He listened. He shouldn't have. The second he focused on it, the tone split into harmonics, 3 layers vibrating at different frequencies, aligning with his heartbeat, then overriding it. His pulse sped up to match the rhythm, then slowed, sinking to something external. His breathing followed, his thoughts followed. A branch snapped behind him. He swung his headlamp around. Nothing, just leaves, dark trunks, the damp smell of soil. But the forest wasn't empty anymore. He could feel that. Something was in it with him. He stepped backward. The tone intensified. His head throbbed with pressure. His vision stuttered, not going black but misaligning, like reality had slipped half a second out of sync. A shadow moved behind the trees, tall, too tall. He blinked and it vanished. Then the tone shifted again, this time sliding into a near-ultrasonic pulse that made his teeth hurt. The bark of the trees around him cracked in thin lines, sap bubbling out like the forest itself was reacting to the frequency. He turned to run. He made it 2 steps before his legs locked. Not froze, locked, as if tendons had been rewired by an unseen hand. He fell to his knees. The tone deepened. The trees vibrated. The soil trembled beneath him. Then the forest lights came on. Not real light, blue bioluminescence blooming through the bark of the trees, veins of cold fire traveling up the trunks, illuminating the forest with unnatural patterns that pulsed in time with the tone. The paths between the trees twisted, not visually, structurally, like the forest was rearranging itself in real time. He forced himself to stand. His muscles resisted, moving reluctantly as if obeying 2 sets of commands. He stumbled between the glowing trees, heart pounding with mechanical precision. Then he saw it, a clearing up ahead, perfect circle, too perfect. The light there was brighter, swirling like mist lit from within. As he approached the edge, the sound cut out, sliced off so abruptly his ears rang with the phantom tone. Silence returned. But the clearing was not empty. Something stood at the center. At first glance, human-shaped. Second glance, wrong, every proportion slightly off. Too long in the limbs, too narrow in the torso, too still to be alive. Its skin reflected the forest glow, but only faintly. Its surface was smooth, metallic, organic, like something grown, not built. Its head tilted a fraction of an inch, tracking him without eyes. He stepped backwards. The figure matched him. Identical pace, identical footfall. He froze, it froze. He lifted his right hand, it lifted its right hand. No, he blinked hard, it had lifted its left, not mirroring him, predicting him. The truth hit him like ice water. It wasn't copying his movement. It was generating the next version of him 2 seconds ahead. The air around the figure shimmered. Layers peeled off its form, like sheets of translucent glass sliding apart, revealing a core of shifting geometry, a structure vibrating at impossible frequency. Then the forest went dark, the bioluminescence extinguished, the tone vanished, the trees fell silent except the clearing. The figure's core pulsed 3 times, a cold wave radiated outward, hitting him like a shock. He collapsed, knees scraping dirt. Light burst from the figure's chest, lancing toward him in a series of thin beams that wrapped around him like a cage. The beams entered his skin. No pain, just pressure, deep, cellular, invasive. His memories cracked open, his fears surfaced, his thoughts rearranged. He saw his entire life as if from a great height, every decision, every mistake, every forgotten moment threaded together into a map he'd never understood before. The figure stepped closer. A voice filled his skull, not spoken, not telepathic, but like hearing meaning directly. You are compatible. His vision blurred, his body convulsed. His heartbeat synced to the forest's pulse again. Something pressed into his mind, cold, calculating, alien, not taking over, installing itself. Then the forest burst back to life, every tree glowing violently bright. The figure stepped back, dissolving into the light as if absorbed. The beams retracted from his skin. He collapsed face first into the dirt, gasping. Hours passed, or seconds. When he finally rose, the clearing was just a clearing again. No light, no figure, no tone, but his pulse wasn't human anymore. He felt it deep, mechanical, synchronized to something far away in the dark. And somewhere in the forest, miles or galaxies away, something synchronized back. He was a night janitor in a private research facility rumored to be shut down decades ago. Yet every night the security gates opened for him. Lights flickered on one by one as if welcoming him, and machines hummed in distant floors with no staff present. He'd grown used to the oddness. The flickering cameras, the rooms that were always locked no matter what badge he swiped. The wing where the floor was cleaner than anything human hands could maintain. But on Tuesday night the elevators went to level -6 on their own, a floor he never knew existed. The elevator doors slid open before he pressed anything. Cold air spilled out. Not building cold, crypt cold. Air that felt like it hadn't circulated in years. He stepped inside, mostly because something behind him, something instinctive in the darkness of the hallway, pushed him forward with a fear humans evolved thousands of years ago. The elevator lights dimmed, then sank into a dull metallic haze. He descended. The floor numbers blinked. B2, B3, B4, B5, then the panel shut off. The elevator jerked, slowed, and stopped with a heavy clunk. The doors opened into silence. A long corridor stretched ahead, illuminated by a faint blue glow that didn't come from the ceiling lights. They were dead. The walls were smooth metal, seamless, too modern for a building this old. A low vibration thrummed through the floor, echoing up his bones. He stepped out. Behind him, the elevator doors sealed shut and refused to open again. He walked forward. On both sides of the hall, thick glass panels began to appear, covered in dust and strange circular residue. Behind each glass room stood large, contorted shadows, tables, restraints, machinery shaped like surgical equipment but designed by someone who didn't share human anatomy. Then he saw the cages, not for animals, for something taller than humans. Empty now, but the bars were bent outward as if something had escaped. He kept walking, heart pounding. The corridor opened into a massive chamber, circular, cathedral high, lit by a soft, pulsing light that flowed through veins in the walls like bioluminescent blood. In the center was a chair. Not a chair, an apparatus. A seat fused with a spine-like column coursing with moving glyphs. The material was metallic but alive, shifting like a slow heartbeat. He stepped closer, compelled by something he didn't understand. The chamber hummed louder with every step, responding to him. When he reached the center, the apparatus unlocked with a gentle cracking sound, its rib-like arms opening outward in invitation. A whisper brushed the inside of his skull. "Sit." He staggered backward. The whisper followed. "Sit." His vision blurred around the edges. His legs felt elastic, unsteady. His pulse synced to the hum of the room. A pressure built behind his eyes like someone pushing their fingers into his thoughts. He couldn't fight it. He sat. Immediately, the rib-like arms closed around him with quiet, fluid precision. Not restricting, adjusting, aligning his spine, tilting his head, positioning his limbs in angles that felt anciently correct. A metallic probe extended from the base, stopping inches from his chest. Symbols lit across it, shifting, spinning, rewriting themselves. Then it struck, not physically. The blow was internal. His mind ruptured open. His vision flooded with impossible images, a desert under 3 suns, a cavern of organic machinery breathing like lungs, a ship the size of a city emerging from a river of metallic liquid. Rows of beings taller than humans, their skin crystalline, their eyes glowing with contained storms. A constellation rearranging itself into a map, a star collapsing into a geometric core of black light. Then he saw Earth, from orbit, cold, small, marked. The probe extended deeper, not touching him but touching his thoughts, threading through memories like a needle passing through cloth. It tugged, stitched, rewired, extracted. He convulsed. His childhood shattered into shards, his hopes dissolved. His past was carved apart and reorganized to fit a pattern he couldn't comprehend. He tried to scream. The apparatus muted the sound before it reached his throat. Another vision bloomed, a colossal dark shape descending through a storm. A city's power grid collapsing. People frozen in time as something scanned them. A network of hidden chambers beneath continents activating in unison. The probe retracted. The rib-like arms opened. He collapsed to the metal floor, gasping, eyes streaming. He was no longer rewired, he was reassigned. The chamber dimmed, the hum softened. A voice, calm, ancient, mechanical, organic, spoke inside him. You will prepare them, you will guide the activation. You are the sixth. His heart nearly stopped. The lights flickered, then went out. He sprinted down the corridor in total darkness, the vibration of the chamber echoing through his bones. When he reached the elevator, its doors opened automatically, waiting. He rode back up in silence, collapsed against the wall. When dawn arrived, he returned home. But the world didn't feel like the world anymore. He could hear signals buried beneath city noise. He could sense electrical currents in walls. He could feel something counting down behind his ribs. Something inside him had woken. And somewhere deep under the earth, the other 5 had woken too. He worked on the 49th floor of a corporate tower made entirely of mirrored glass, the kind that reflected the city lights so perfectly it almost looked like the building wasn't really there. At night, the rooftop was his only refuge, quiet, empty, a place where he could breathe above the noise and deadlines and fluorescent misery below. That night, the air felt wrong the moment he stepped onto the roof. Too still, too heavy, as if the atmosphere had thickened into something with weight. He slid the door shut behind him and walked toward the railing. The city stretched out with its constellation of windows and headlights, but something in the skyline felt misaligned. 3 skyscrapers in the distance flickered, then returned to normal. A drone drifted too slowly. A billboard froze mid-animation. He blinked hard. The rooftop lights hummed, then dimmed. Then something whispered across the sky. Not sound, distortion. A warping ripple like a heat wave but sharper, slicing a dark seam through the clouds. The seam widened into a jagged line of shimmering black light. Static danced along its edges. The temperature dropped so fast his breath turned to vapor. He backed away from the railing. The seam pulsed once, twice, then tore open like fabric being ripped apart by invisible claws. Through it something descended. Not a craft, not a creature, not light. A presence. It dropped silently from the rift, trailing a cascade of thin, luminous strands that writhed like living circuitry. It was tall, humanoid only in the loosest, cruelest sense. Its body was elongated, constructed of layered optical distortions that flickered between transparency and liquid silver. Its face, or the space where a face would be, glowed with shifting sigils rotating slowly like gears inside a clock of flesh. His knees buckled. The pressure around him increased until the air felt like concrete. The presence landed without sound. The rooftop under its feet dipped outward as if space itself bowed in submission. He froze, unable to turn away. His pulse hammered violently against a force he couldn't resist. The being tilted its head in a motion that seemed to bend the night around it. Then it spoke. Not out loud, not telepathy, something deeper. A message written into the architecture of his thoughts. We have chosen you. He staggered back, grabbing the wall for balance. His vision doubled, tripled, then dissolved into a tunnel of spiraling geometric shapes. He was no longer on the rooftop. His body was still there, but his consciousness had been wrenched upward, pulled into a vertical river of vibrating light. He floated above the building, above the city, above himself. His awareness expanded like a balloon inflating too quickly. Below him, his own body stood motionless, eyes blank, a puppet waiting for strings to be reattached. The presence drew closer. Memories burst open, cracking like old photographs thrown into fire. Childhood nights staring at stars. The first moment he felt truly alone. The day he realized nothing in his life felt real anymore. Conversations he overheard but didn't understand. Moments that seemed random at the time, now rearranging into a pattern. They had been watching him for years. The presence reached into him. Its limb, if it could be called that, extended and unfurled into dozens of needle-like filaments of shimmering black lavender light. They threaded through his soul, weaving into the fabric of who he was. He felt everything unravel. Ego, history, identity. Then everything reassembled tighter, sharper, altered. Another message seared through him. You see the structure now. He did. Against his will. He understood things no human should. The patterns hidden in streetlights, the silent code in the movement of crowds, the electrical hum beneath the city that was not electrical at all. He felt the earth like it was a machine humming beneath his feet. He sensed multiple watchers in the sky, quiet, patient, calculating. The presence drew closer, filling his entire field of vision, its form multiplying into fractal mirrors of itself. A final filament touched the center of his forehead. A burning mark blossomed there, cold, infinite, alive. He saw the future. Not in images, in structure. A sequence unfolding, a timeline that wasn't linear. Something approaching Earth not from space but from a dimension folded tightly around it like skin. He was part of it now. The filaments retracted. His consciousness slammed back into his body with brutal force. His knees hit the rooftop. He vomited. He shook violently. When he looked up, the presence was collapsing back into the rift, pulling its impossible geometry with it. The seam closed like a mouth sealing shut, leaving nothing but a cloudless sky. He lay on the rooftop for an hour, unable to move. When he finally stood, the city looked the same, but he wasn't the same. He felt a pulsing in his forehead. He sensed signals that weren't human, messages in the hum of street lamps, patterns in the passing headlights, shadows that moved with too much purpose. Something inside him had been activated. And every night after that, when he looked up at the sky, the world answered back. He remembered only fragments of what happened in the cave as a child, flashes of cold blue light, the sharp smell of minerals, the sensation of something watching him from behind the stone. For years he convinced himself it was a hallucination, the result of wandering too deep underground during a school trip. But the memory resurfaced every time he was near mountains, near stone, near silence. 20 years later he returned, not because he wanted closure, but because the dreams made him. For months he saw the same vision each night, a pulsing cavern, a chamber carved by something that wasn't erosion, and a shape waiting for him. The dream always ended with a voice, not heard but felt, whispering a sequence of numbers into his skull. The numbers repeated in his waking thoughts until they felt like coordinates etched into bone. He followed them. The cave entrance hadn't changed, but the air around it had. It hummed. A low-frequency vibration reverberated through the mossy rocks, through the soil, through his jaw. Something ancient pulsed beneath the earth like a buried heart waking from hibernation. He stepped inside, flashlight slicing through the darkness. The temperature dropped with each step. His breath fogged. The beam flickered. Water dripped in slow, rhythmic intervals, too steady to be natural. The first sign came at the 30-meter mark. The walls weren't stone anymore. They were smoothened as if carved by tools centuries ahead of anything human. Strange patterns, thin grooves arranged in spiraling sequences, decorated the tunnel. They glowed faintly when he passed, sensing his presence. His stomach twisted. He had been here before. He just didn't understand back then. The deeper he went, the more the tunnel widened until it opened into a circular chamber the size of a cathedral. The ceiling arched high, lost in darkness. The floor was covered with a thin layer of metallic dust that shifted like liquid mercury. Then he saw the structure in the center. A pillar, 7 meters tall, shaped like a spine of pure obsidian, but breathing, expanding with slow, steady pulses. He approached it. With every step the chamber vibrated, not violently, deliberately, expectantly. The pillar's surface rippled, revealing veins of pale blue light. Geometry unfolded across it like circuitry made from living stone. He reached out a trembling hand. The pillar responded. A section peeled open like petals unfurling. Inside it was a hollow core filled with suspended particles of glowing dust. The dust arranged itself into symbols, non-human, angular, shifting between three-dimensional forms too complex for instinct to process. The symbols rotated. He felt a spike of pressure behind his eyes, his thoughts short-circuited. The chamber's hum grew louder, deeper. The symbols expanded outward from the core, floating into the air, orbiting him in perfect mathematical precision. His flashlight flickered violently, then died. Darkness swallowed him except for the blue symbols. Then he heard it, the voice from his childhood. "You have returned." He stumbled backward, but the symbols clamped around him like magnetic fields, locking him in place. The pillar pulsed with light, each pulse hitting his chest like a slow hammer. His memories burst open. The day he first entered the cave as a child, the moment the stone cracked the hand. No, the appendage. Reaching through the flash of light, the blackout, the mark burned beneath his ribs, the years of forgetting it hadn't been a hallucination. It had been an installation. The vessel is mature. He collapsed to his knees. The chamber darkened further. The symbols turned black-blue. The pillar's form shifted, stretching, elongating, splitting into multiple branches that twisted like the limbs of an ancient organism. Something stepped out of the pillar. Not a creature, not a machine, a hybrid of both. Its body was composed of layered stone plates fused with liquid light. Its limbs were slender, jointed too many times, moving in fluid arcs as if underwater. Its head was long and faceless except for a single line of rotating sigils running down the center. He couldn't breathe. The being reached toward him, not to touch his body, but to touch something inside it. Its hand passed through his chest effortlessly. A cold burst detonated behind his sternum. His heart stuttered, then reorganized itself around a new rhythm. His vision distorted into spirals. His thoughts split into multiple threads, each processing a different sensory input simultaneously. He realized in that moment he wasn't being abducted. He wasn't being examined. He wasn't being punished. He was being awakened. The being tightened its grip around the invisible core inside him. A wave of alien energy surged through his nervous system. Symbols etched themselves into his neurons. Patterns locked into his perception. A signal, ancient, buried, activated fully. His scream never left his throat, then silence. The being withdrew its hand. The pillar folded shut. The symbols dropped lifeless to the floor. He collapsed. Hours passed before he crawled out of the cave, trembling, drenched in cold sweat. The sunlight felt harsh, synthetic, wrong. The forest sounded mechanical. The wind carried tones he hadn't heard before. His heartbeat whispered patterns. His pulse emitted subtle electrical clicks. The mark under his ribs glowed faintly through his shirt. They hadn't chosen him. They had built him. And now, whatever he had been built for had started counting down. He had always been the kind of person who preferred the night shift. The quiet, the solitude, the chance to focus without anyone breathing over his shoulder. Working as a technician in an underground communications array wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough, and the isolation suited him. But that night, deep beneath the earth in a facility that officially did not exist, he noticed something wrong with the monitors. Not broken, not malfunctioning, listening. The screens flickered with patterns that didn't match any signal the facility tracked. Not radio waves, not satellite data, not seismic activity. These were symmetrical bursts, geometric, almost architectural, like blueprints made of static. He leaned closer. The patterns shifted in real time, responding to his breath, his heartbeat, his presence. He touched the monitor. It warmed under his fingers. Then all 6 screens switched to a single image, a black void, a thin vertical line of white light slowly expanding like an eyelid beginning to open. He stepped back, pulse rising. The lights in the room dimmed. The ventilation stopped. The floor vibrated with a low, metallic resonance deep enough to make his teeth ache. He turned to leave. The door sealed shut. Not locked, sealed, as if welded from the inside. A compressed hiss echoed through the room, and the screens erupted into a frenzy of white static. Then the static parted like mist, revealing what looked like walls, smooth, metallic, curving at impossible angles. Not this facility. Not anywhere on Earth. The line of white light on the screen widened into a towering doorway, and something stepped through. A shadow, thin, elongated, humanoid but not human. It walked with impossible stillness, each step phasing slightly ahead of its own movement, like time was misaligned around it. Its body flickered between solid and translucent, revealing machinery, No, not machinery, structures inside. Floating organs of glowing crystal neural filaments made of shifting symbols. It raised its head toward him. He froze. His thoughts stopped mid-sentence. A pulse of static rippled across the room. The lights exploded, not shattered, burst in a silent bloom of sparks as if crushed by pressure. Darkness swallowed the facility except for the faint glow emanating from the monitors. The figure stepped fully into the room. Though it had no eyes, he felt its attention like a hand gripping the back of his skull. His breath caught. His muscles tightened, not in fear but because something inside him was being accessed. A file opened without permission. The being extended one arm. The arm unfolded into multiple thin appendages of shimmering blacklight tendrils. They moved like they were underwater, bending the air, warping it, rewriting the shape of the room. A tendril touched his forehead. His vision shattered. He stood on a desert of black sand under a violet sky. He floated above a swirling nebula shaped like an inverted cathedral. He gazed into a pit of living shadows whispering in languages older than planets. He saw beings like gods dissecting timelines as if they were strands of hair. Then he saw Earth, small, dull, exposed, and he saw them, hundreds of the beings, surrounding it like skeletal angels, silently analyzing every human broadcast, every heartbeat, every algorithm, every history. A voice, low, layered, impossible, filled him. "You have heard our call. You have answered correctly. You are designated Receiver 9. He fell to his knees, gasping for air that didn't exist in the vision. Suddenly he was back in the facility, but everything was different. The room stretched slightly as if its geometry had been modified. The air felt denser. The lights were still dead. The only illumination came from the being and the monitors, which now displayed a swirling vortex of shifting symbols. The being placed something in his hand, cold, weightless, alive. He looked down. It was a thin shard of translucent material, glowing faintly, engraved with rotating runes. The shard pulsed in sync with his heartbeat. "This will grow with you. This will prepare you. This will connect you." His fingers closed involuntarily around the shard. The being stepped back. The doorway of white light reopened behind it. Before it vanished, the being delivered one final message that pierced him like a blade made of meaning. "The transmission begins soon. You will not resist. You were built for this." Then it disappeared. The screens went black. The lights returned. The door unsealed. He ran up the stairs, up the hallways, up until he reached the surface and collapsed on the gravel outside the facility. But the night felt different now, too quiet, too tuned. He clutched the shard in his palm and felt it pulse, growing, sinking, merging with his nervous system. He wasn't just chosen, he was part of the system now. Receiver 9. The 9th awakened node, and somewhere far above Earth, something massive was preparing to send the first transmission. He had taken the job in the government archive basement because it sounded peaceful, dusty boxes, forgotten documents, silence broken only by the hum of old fluorescent tubes. But the room he discovered on his third week of work was not on any official blueprint. It appeared behind a shelf that hadn't been moved in decades. A heavy metal door covered in flaking paint and a warning sign written in a dialect he didn't recognize. He should have turned around, but the door was open a crack, and a cold draft seeped out. Not normal cold. Cold that carried the scent of stone that had never seen sunlight. Cold that hummed, softly, subtly, like something breathing below consciousness. He pushed the door open. A staircase spiraled downward. He hesitated, flashlight trembling in his hand. Something inside him, an intuition deeper than fear, urged him to leave. But another sensation, older, programmed, whispered that he had been meant to find this place. He descended. Each step amplified the hum vibrating through the air. The walls grew smoother. The temperature dropped. The light dimmed until his flashlight felt swallowed by the dark. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a hall. Long, narrow, silent. The walls weren't concrete anymore. They were metallic, seamless, curved like the interior of a vessel. Thin lines of faint blue light pulsed inside the material like veins. He stepped forward. The hum deepened like a heartbeat. He reached the main chamber and froze. The room was circular, massive, cathedral-like, with a domed ceiling that shimmered with shifting patterns. In the center was a cylindrical monolith the height of a small house, covered in glyphs that crawled across its surface like living ink. Around the monolith stood 12 chairs, not chairs, pods, organic, mechanical, hybrid, each shaped like a cradle for something human-shaped, each connected to the monolith by thin skeletal conduits. 11 were occupied by people, no subjects. Their bodies hovered inside the pods, suspended in vertical positions, eyes closed, skin illuminated with faint pulses of electric blue. Some looked old, some young. Some wore modern clothing, others wore garments decades out of fashion. Some looked like they'd been here for a very, very long time. The 12th pod was empty, waiting, his breath caught. Because deep inside he already knew the empty one was for him. He stepped backward in terror. A light on the monolith flashed. Once, twice, 3 times. The hum sharpened into an audible tone, metallic, resonant, painfully precise. The subjects inside the pods shuddered as one, their chests rising in synchronized movements. Then their eyes snapped open. All 11, all at once. They stared at him, not with the blank gaze of victims, but with recognition. Their eyes glowed faintly with the same glyphs crawling across the monolith. He stumbled back further. One of the pods detached a conduit. The metal floor vibrated. The monolith opened. A slit cracked down its center, revealing a spiraling core of rotating machinery made of light, geometric structures folding into themselves endlessly. The tone cut out. Silence. Then a voice, not spoken by the subjects, not spoken by anything physical. A voice that existed inside the chamber, inside the air, inside his thoughts. You are the final link. His legs buckled. The floor rippled beneath him like the surface of black liquid. He tried to stand, but the gravity around the monolith changed, pulling him forward, bending space subtly but undeniably. You were located. You were observed. You were selected. The 11 subjects stepped out of their pods in perfect unison. Their movements were too smooth, too synchronized, too identical. Their bodies looked human, but their posture, their silence, their focus were not. They formed a circle around him. His pulse thundered. His mind screamed. His voice wouldn't work. The monolith pulsed brighter. A filament of pure white light extended from its core, slithering through the air like a serpent made of electricity. It wrapped around his torso, not touching, phasing, passing through skin, bone, organ, thought. He wasn't being pulled, he was being scanned. His memories unspooled, extracted like threads, his first school lesson. The day his grandmother died, the sensation of running in rain, the disappointment of his first heartbreak, the dull ache of loneliness, the hope he never admitted, the fear he always carried, all catalogued, all evaluated, all rearranged. The filament plunged deeper into his identity, into the architecture of who he believed he was. And then the voice returned, "You are compatible." The 11 subjects stepped closer. Their shadows merged behind him into a shape that was not human. Their eyes flickered in a pattern he understood without understanding. It was an invitation and a command encoded together. The empty pod unfolded. A cradle of silver-black material extended outward like a blooming flower. He tried to resist, but his body walked forward. Not by force, by design, by programming he never knew he carried. The pod embraced him. The monolith's conduits connected. Light flooded his vision. His heartbeat synchronized with a rhythm older than humanity. His thoughts dissolved into patterns. His individuality thinned into a translucent thread. His future rewrote itself. For a moment he saw everything, the network beneath the earth, the structures hidden in mountains, the signals humans couldn't detect, the beings moving between dimensions like water, the chain of 12, the activation cycle, the plan. Then he saw darkness. He opened his eyes. He was floating, suspended in glowing blue, held in the 12th pod, alive but not alone. His heart beat in unison with 11 others. He was the final link. And somewhere far beneath the earth, the system began to awaken. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more.